Morning, everyone. You know, I'm Paul from Essex Business Forum. What many of you might not know is that this is actually quite a new chapter. Before becoming a celebrant, I spent many years working with business communications, public relations, and investor relations, helping companies tell their stories. And I still do that on a part-time basis. That work took me all over the place. I've worked across Europe, North and South America, and Africa, and even spent several years travelling backwards and forwards to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the events happened. Which, that whole thing that I've done, if ever you've tried explaining to a friend or family, and they said, what exactly is it you do? Well, it's hard to explain that whole communications thing. It's all really hard. But amongst other things during that time, I found myself teaching a group of people in French how to take photographs so the company can document progress on its remote sites in the rainforest. Now, despite my surname being French, my French is poor. My conversational French extended roughly to Dulieu, s'il vous plaît. L'addition, s'il vous plaît. And où est le syndicat initiative? Which loosely translates as a beer please, a bill please, and where's the tourist information office? So explaining camera technique in the middle of the Congolese rainforest was an interesting experience. But in that career, I spoke at conferences, seminars, business presentations, or new business events. I helped companies communicate the good news, deal with crises, raise money and comply with regulatory rules. I've written speeches, annual reports, sustainability reports, presentations, press releases, white papers, TED documents, websites, brochures, and posters. And I've trained people to deal with the media, give presentations, and interviews. So standing up in front of people and speaking isn't entirely new. It's standing in a room, helping a couple start their married life, or helping a family say goodbye to someone. That carries a whole new level of responsibility. Now, if I'm honest, becoming a celebrant was never really part of the career plan. When I met my careers teacher at school back in the 1980s, she didn't say, oh, one day you'll be writing wedding ceremonies and standing next to your coffin. What she actually said was, you should become a landscape gardener. Somehow, celebrant is exactly where life has taken me. I have to say, it's one of the most meaningful things I've ever done. Although it doesn't make networking slightly awkward when people ask me, well, what is it you exactly do? And I say, well, I do funerals. Oh, I do weddings as well. But they're basically two of the most important days of someone's life. Just at very different ends of the emotion and the life experience spectrum. But what first got me into thinking about celibacy was actually attending funerals. Even before I started this career, I'd already been to around 40 funerals, mainly because I come from a massive family. And at some point during this, you start noticing things. You notice that some of the funerals are incredibly moving, and they really resonate. But more often than not, I would sit there thinking, there was so much more to this person than what we just heard. And that's disappointing because funerals matter enormously. For many families, it's the one moment where everyone comes together to remember someone properly. And that made me realise how important the whole ceremony and the words involved actually was. Because if the ceremony captures the person well, it can be incredibly powerful. It can help people celebrate life. It can help families begin the process of healing from their grief. And in that darkest hour, it can make a real difference. And that thought eventually led me to discover celibacy as a profession. So I went away, I did a residential training course because I wanted to do this properly. My whole life has been in a professional environment, and I wanted to be celibate that's very professional. And so Essex Celebrants was born. And when I went on that training course, I thought, right, it's all about funerals for me. I'm quite reflective by nature. I enjoy telling stories about people's lives. What I quickly realised is that celibacy actually sits at two very different moments in people's lives. One of those is weddings. Weddings are joyful, hopeful occasions. Couples want a ceremony that reflects who they are. Often that means telling their love story, how they met, what makes them work as a couple, what they love about each other, what they loathe about each other, and sometimes including fun, funny, gently embarrassing moments, which is always very good. Yes. And the wonderful thing about a celebrant wedding is it can be truly personal, they can be traditional, they can be relaxed, they can take place pretty much anywhere. They can include music, children, readings, people playing the guitar, all of those aspects. And in my experience so far, children is the thing that puts the fear of God into me. I did a wedding last year and the couple said, right, we want our 3-year-old son to be the ring bearer. All was going beautiful until he decided it'd be fun to start playing tennis. He headed off back down the aisle. The best man chased after him. Shortly afterwards, the groom chased after him. And for about 30 seconds, it was like a scene from an old episode of Benny Hill. This man weaving between them. But it was great because it actually brought real personality. He was an important part of the family dynamic for the couple. And it brought real personality and joy and a moment of kind of relaxed kind of softness. Good news is 3-year-olds get very bored very quickly, and so they're running around soon stops. But then the other end of life are funerals, which of course are hugely different. When I work with a family after someone has passed away, I'll normally spend a couple of hours with them just listening to stories about that person's life, the things they love, funny moments, the little quirks that made them who they are. And sometimes those conversations are extraordinary. You hear stories that even other family members have never heard before. And you sit there thinking, this is incredible. Everybody is different. Everybody has something special about them. And that's what makes it a real joy for me when I'm actually helping create funeral service, because it's never the same thing. Everyone is very, very different. Everyone is personal, and everyone has an impact. And part of my job is helping show that to people in the room. One of the things I quickly realised in doing this job is, whether it's weddings or funerals or baby namings or whatever, it's a real privilege to be trusted with these special moments in people's lives. I'm invited into their lives at times when they go through something very emotional. It could be deep joy, it could be just supreme love, it could be grief. And to be part of that is a huge privilege. On the funeral side of things, after one funeral recently, the family wrote to me afterwards and said that the ceremony had made such a difference on a really difficult day. It made it much more bearable. And a little while later, one of the man's friends contacted me to ask if he could have a copy of the script as well, because the ceremony really helped and wanted to keep the words to be back in the years to come. It's that sort of stuff, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a funeral, whether it's a baby naming, it's that ability to actually help people and actually create something truly unique and truly special, which is why I do this. I help people come together. I help people to remember. I help people celebrate and commemorate. And sometimes I help people begin a new chapter of their life. So that's how I ended up being a celebrant. From big, brash, loud corporate communications to helping mark love and loss in the beginnings. It certainly wasn't part of the original plan, but it's become one of the greatest privileges of my working life. And unlike gardening, I happen to be very good at it.
If I take my scenario, looking at Sarah and I as an example, I'm not a religious person at all. If Sarah were to pass and I had to arrange a religious funeral, I would have no idea at all.
Yeah.
And likewise, if I were to pass and Sarah was to arrange a funeral, I wouldn't like religion to be any part of it. To be can you advise and help? How do you navigate that kind of theme or ability?
When it comes to funerals, so celebrant-led funerals, you start with a blank sheet of paper. It can be completely non-religious, it can be completely religious. There's nothing to stop me providing a funeral that is totally and utterly Catholic funeral service, for example. Obviously, for the people there of faith, I'm not religious either, but the words can be as religious or it's unreligious. You can have hymns, you don't need to have hymns. You can have Bible readings, you can have prayers, you don't need to. You can have readings from other scriptures. You can have a combination of all of them. I think what a celebrant-led funeral does is it gives people that total control, and it allows you to have all the bits that would have mattered to the person who passed away. Quite often, people say, "Oh, wait, I'm having more depression," because they learnt it. The mum or the father or whoever learnt it at Sunday school. Nothing else within that funeral service might be religious at all. But for those people, it's like, she would have liked that. And this is what it's all about. It's creating something that the person that's passed away would have wanted. So it's a friendship.
Do you ever work with the dying person who will give their wishes for what they want to have at their funeral?
Usually I will get appointed by the funeral residents, so they will try and match them. But actually, quite often, I've been given sheets. This is what they really wanted.
Right.
And it's fantastic because actually for the families, it takes away so much of the guesswork.
Yeah.
I did a funeral at the tail end of last year, and the lady knew she was going to die. She had terminal cancer, and she planned absolutely everything. Who would speak, the songs, the music that she came, the readings, and everything. So from the family's perspective, it took away any guesswork, any worries that they wouldn't get it right. And I have got a resource. It's going to go on the EBF website at some point, which is basically something you can copy and work with the will, and you can actually say to your family, "This is what I would like." Because one of the biggest concerns that people had when they were creating the organising a funeral family is, we've got this right. Is this what they were wanting? Yeah. Then what was it? What they wanted you was?
Yes.
So I'm happy. I'll get back to you around because it really does help families in that grief process know that they're doing things as their loved one would want to.
Yeah. Thank you.
What's been your favourite venue for a funeral or wedding?
I would actually say the chapel in Woodland Road. Funeral, the crematoria are like this. I mean, you'll probably all read into it. A lot of them have been updated quite a lot, so they've actually got screens you can have pictures on, and I mean, they've been done in the crematoria with a whole room you can actually project images on. So it could be like this, an image of an empty football stadium or Headley Castle or whatever. And it's lovely, and they're functional, and they're big and whatever. But I think that being in something old, something quite intimate is really quite special. But then again, it all comes down to personal preference.
Well, how far will you travel? Are you restricted when you can find?
No. I mean, for weddings I've done, furthest I've been down is down to Hampshire. I would travel. I mean, obviously within Essex, I would travel as much. Of course, if somebody said to me, and I have actually had inquiries about doing a civil ceremony wedding in Ireland, I'm happy to do it. I mean, obviously, then my travel becomes part of it. But no, I mean, and what's important to me is the ability to tell people, especially with humans, it's actually to be a guiding hand to help us through what was a really process. And it's not a very commercial attitude, but the ability to do that overcomes the money aspect of it. So, I'm not traveling anywhere at the moment. It makes sense.
Paul, just with regard, you were talking about a questionnaire or something.
Yeah.
What form is that going to take?
I can bring points out, like an email, it's a PDF, and it's just really a case of, when my time comes, this is what I'd like. And you can pop it in the envelope you will, just say to your relative, it's in the straw here, this is what I'd like. And it just takes out a lot of guesswork. But,
That would be useful for me. I do as you know, I do quite a lot of verbals, and I'd be happy to.
I'll get some copies through.
Put it in the member's office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, don't fit it all in, but even things like, do you want money to go to a charity? Do you want people to work particular, something in particular to the wedding or funeral? Do you want any religious elements? Do you not? Whatever. even where joint actually scattered. Some of this can be included with people's wills, the actual scattered and whatever. But it's just it's the other stuff around it. It just makes it so much easier for remaining founders when it comes to their time.
From my point of view, I think that's good because as far as anything you put in your will in relation to what you want doing there, the executors don't have an obligation to follow that. They are entrusted to decide themselves what they want to do. And so it's guidance only. So I don't normally put that into a will and whether they want to be cremated or buried. But something like that would be useful. And I think that will sort out. Cool. Thank you.